Hello and welcome to Immigration with Andrew. I'm Andrew, and in this video we will be discussing in more detail the new Lawful Prospective Immigrant status. Okay, let's have some fun. So in the last week's video, I discussed the 4 different pathways to permanent residence and U.S. citizenship as outlined by the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021 that was introduced in Congress recently. I received a lot of questions and comments on the LPI, this Lawful Prospective Immigrant path. So in this video, I'm going to be focusing a little bit more detail on that path, not the DREAM Act path, not the TPS path, not the farm workers path. So broadly speaking, I want to discuss what the lawful prospective immigrant status is. I want to discuss what the requirements are for that and what the requirements are for the permanent residence 5 years later. I want to discuss, and then the eligibility requirements, physical presence, criminal history, and then people who had a particular status on January 1st of 2021. So let's get into it. Lawful prospective immigrant status is a new status. It does not exist in immigration law currently. Remember, this bill was just introduced. Bill has not gone to any committees, not had any hearings, not had any markups on the bill, any amendments. So it's still very new. But this lawful prospective immigrant status will be valid for 6 years. After those 6 years, the status may be extended for an additional 6 years. But without the extension, or with the extension, after the person holds this, they're calling it lawful prospective immigrant, LPI, status for 5 years, the person can then apply for permanent residence. So requirements for the LPI status: be present in the United States on January 1st of 2021. Now, that requirement has some exceptions. If the person is not in the United States, but was here for at least 3 years and departed or was deported or removed after January 20th of 2017, when the previous president was inaugurated, then there's a waiver available. And so the bill provides a particular process for people who are not in the United States, but who would otherwise be eligible. So that's physical presence. Criminal history, we talked in last week's video about the specifics, but people with specific types of crimes on the record may not be eligible. Crime involving moral turpitude, certain kinds of drug crimes, prostitution, any kind of felony, or 3 or more misdemeanors, they're not going to be eligible. But there are exceptions for that too. The waivers are pretty broad, and so we'll just have to see how those waiver eligibility requirements change, if at all, as the bill progresses, especially through the Senate, right, with the filibuster. So we'll see. But then the third one for LPI status, if the person had a particular status on January 1st of 2021, the person is not going to be eligible. And so I believe that I found a typo in the bill, and I'll explain why. But this is, again, the point is the same. It's very early in the process. We'll have to see how these wrinkles get ironed out, how the eligibility requirements change, if at all, and how the waiver requirements change, if at all. But so the bill provides that if somebody had a non-immigrant status, like a tourist visa, a J visa, an H visa, whatever, on January 1st of 2021, then the person's not going to be eligible. So, but the way the bill is written is it provides only that, like, diplomats and their families and their helpers and assistants aren't eligible. And I believe that to be a typo. I believe that exclusion is going to apply not to just the diplomats, but to all of the non-immigrant visa holders on January 1st of 2021. So if somebody came as whatever type of non-immigrant visa, and then that status expired before January 1st of 2021, then that person would be eligible. And so we're just gonna have to see. So who's not eligible? Well, people who are already permanent residents aren't eligible. People who are already asylees or refugees are not eligible. They have their own path. People with TPS, they have their own path. And then the bill provides that, well, the bill as written provides that the diplomats are not eligible, but I believe that it should say, and I'll put the specific citation in the comment or in the details below. But I believe the bill should say that anybody with non-immigrant status on January 1st of 2021 is not eligible, except people with H-2B on January 1st of 2021 and certain infrastructure workers for the COVID-19 pandemic. They would be eligible. So this gets confusing. Again, I don't want to get into the weeds too much on a YouTube video, but this is how the law works. There's a general rule, then there's an exception, then there's exceptions to the exception, and this gets confusing, right? So we'll just have to see. But the most common question I received on last week's video was, I had this status, or I have this status, am I eligible? And I noticed the typo. I noticed the typo last night, so I wanted to clarify that. But again, with the overarching caveat, still very early. We're just going to have to see, especially in the Senate, how the bill changes and what gets added, what gets taken out, and just how the bill's text changes as the bill goes through committee. No news on when any of those committee hearings will be, but that's my point. It's early. We'll have to see. It's all up in the air. So, but let's assume for the moment that the person has the LPI status, this lawful prospective immigrant status. After 5 years, they can apply for permanent residence. They can apply for a green card. The same criminal requirements apply. So if the person was eligible for the LPI, but then in the LPI status, they picked up 3 felonies, let's say, well, now we've got a problem, right? So the same criminal requirements apply to the green card stage as the LPI stage. The physical presence part, the person cannot have been gone outside the United States for over 180 days in a calendar year. And the person has to have satisfied their federal tax liability, which I interpret to mean pay the tax bill, pay the tax bill. So that's in essence the LPI's path. This will be the path, I assume, if it exists and gets passed and signed by the president, that most people will benefit from. I mean, they estimate 11 million people, right? So that's a big number. We're just going to have to see. I'm repeating it because it's so important. I don't want to in any way suggest that this status exists yet. It's early. Today is February 28th of 2021. So it's early in the process, but given the for me, overwhelming amount of comments and questions from the last video, I thought it was worth doing this additional video specifically on the LPI track, especially because I noticed that typo, what I believe to be a typo, in the bill as it's written now. And again, bill will change as it goes through committee, has to get passed by each house. They have to agree. That's how a bill becomes law, right? So we'll have to see, but I hope that's helpful. Please continue to leave the questions in the comments below or shoot me a text. Subscribe to get these updates. If there's any news, as always, I'll get a video up right away. And thanks for watching.